Walked into my house with a smile on my face, holding surprise anniversary gifts I'd bought from 3 different countries. My suitcase was full of his favorite things. My heart was full of love, but when I opened that bedroom door, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. And the person standing there, half-dressed and frozen in shock, wasn't just anyone, it was her. My best friend since childhood. The woman who'd been my maid of honor. The woman who held my hand through every heartbreak before him. My name is Sarah, and I want to share the story of how my husband destroyed our 5-year marriage. It all happened while I was planning the perfect surprise for our anniversary. And the person he betrayed me with was my own best friend. What I did next, nobody saw coming. Not him, not her, not our families, not our friends. Everyone thought they knew how this story would end. But I rewrote the ending myself. And it left every single person in my life absolutely speechless. It all started 6 months before everything fell apart. My husband Jake and I had been married for 5 years. We met in college, fell in love over late-night study sessions and cheap pizza, and got married right after graduation. He was my everything. My best friend was Emma, and we had known each other since we were 7 years old. She was there for my first crush, my first heartbreak, my first everything. When Jake proposed, Emma cried almost as much as I did. She helped me pick out my wedding dress and threw me the most amazing bachelorette party. She was always the first person I called whenever I had good news or bad news. Our lives were intertwined in every possible way. Emma lived just 2 blocks away, and we had dinner together at least twice a week. She and Jake got along wonderfully, which made me so happy because I had heard so many stories about husbands and best friends who don't get along. But Jake and Emma, they seemed like siblings. Or at least that's what I thought. In March of 2025, Jake started acting differently. He became distant, always on his phone, and started working late more often. He seemed distracted when we talked, but I didn't suspect an affair. I thought he was stressed about work. He had been trying to get a promotion for months, and I knew it was weighing on him. I wanted to do something special to lift his spirits. Our 6th anniversary was coming up in September, and I wanted to surprise him with something huge. Something that would remind him why we fell in love in the first place. I began planning an elaborate surprise trip to Japan, somewhere we had always dreamed of going together. To make it even more special, I decided to travel in advance, to set everything up. I would go to Japan, arrange special experiences, book amazing restaurants, and create this entire magical itinerary before returning. To surprise him with the trip. I know it might sound excessive, but Jake had been so down. And I wanted to lift his spirits. I wanted to show him just how much I loved him. I told him I was going on a work trip and confided in Emma because I needed someone to help me keep the secret and assist with some of the planning from home. She thought it was the most romantic thing she had ever heard, and promised to help however she could. I left for Japan in late August, planning to be gone for 2 weeks. The plan was to return 3 days before our anniversary, and surprise Jake with everything. Those 2 weeks in Japan were incredible. I was so excited. Taking videos of all the places we would visit together and buying gifts from every city. In Kyoto, I found a tiny shop that sold handcrafted leather journals. And I bought him the most beautiful one because Jake loved writing. I was practically floating on air the entire time, imagining his reaction, and feeling completely consumed by excitement and love. Emma and I texted every day while I was gone. She sent me updates about things at home, and asked about my trip. She seemed genuinely excited for the surprise. Everything seemed completely normal, and I had no idea that while I was in Japan buying gifts and planning romantic dinners, my husband was sleeping with my best friend in our own bed. I came home 3 days early because I had finished everything faster than expected, and I was too excited to wait. I wanted to see Jake's face when I told him about the trip. I didn't tell anyone. I was coming home early, because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. I took a taxi from the airport, straight to our house. It was about 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday. And Jake worked from home on Thursdays, so I knew he would be there. I opened the front door as quietly as I could because I wanted to sneak up on him. The house was completely quiet. I walked through the living room, and noticed Emma's purse on our couch. It seemed a little strange because Emma usually texted me whenever she stopped by to see Jake. But I figured, maybe she was just dropping something off or helping set up something for the surprise. I smiled, thinking about how sweet my best friend was. Then I heard sounds coming from upstairs, from our bedroom, sounds that made my blood run cold. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 10 seconds. My brain was trying to make sense of what I was hearing while my heart was screaming a truth I didn't want to believe. I walked up those stairs, each step feeling like I was moving through concrete. My hands were shaking, my whole body was shaking. I reached our bedroom door, and saw it was slightly open. I pushed it open the rest of the way. And there they were, my husband and my best friend in my bed. They didn't even notice me at first, and when they finally did, the look on their faces would have been almost comical if it hadn't been destroying my entire life. Emma screamed. Jake jumped up and started saying my name over and over. Sarah. Sarah. Sarah, like it was the only word he knew. I just stood there. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Emma was scrambling to cover herself with my sheets. The sheets I had picked out. The sheets I had washed before I left for my trip. Jake was trying to put his pants on and talk at the same time, tripping over both his words and his feet. I finally found my voice and said 3 words. Get out now. Emma started crying and trying to explain. And Jake was begging me to let him talk. But I just kept repeating those 3 words. Get out now. Get out now. Get out now. My voice grew louder each time until I was screaming it. Emma grabbed her clothes and ran out of the room. I heard her rushing down the stairs, and the front door slamming behind her. Jake tried to come near me, but I held up my hand. And something in my expression must have been terrifying because he froze in place. I told him he had 1 hour to pack a bag and leave. He started crying and begging, saying it was a mistake, saying it meant nothing, saying he loved me, saying all the things cheaters say when they get caught. I walked out of the room and went to the guest bedroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, and could hear him in the hallway begging me to talk to him. I didn't say another word. After a while, I heard him packing, and then I heard him leave. When I was sure he was gone, I came out. I walked back into our bedroom, and just looked at it, this room where we had laughed, talked, and made plans for our future. This room where we had comforted each other during hard times. This room where we had celebrated good news, and they had ruined it. They had ruined everything. My phone started ringing, then Jake, then Emma again, then Jake again. I turned it off. I stripped the bed and threw everything in the trash. I couldn't stand to look at those sheets. Then I sat down on the bare mattress, and finally let myself cry. I cried for hours until I had no tears left. I cried for my marriage. I cried for my friendship. I cried for the life I thought I had. The next few days were a blur. Jake tried everything to contact me. He called, he texted, he emailed, and even sent messages through friends. Emma did the same. Everyone wanted to explain. Everyone wanted to apologize. Everyone wanted forgiveness. I blocked them both on everything. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want their excuses or their apologies. I wanted them to disappear. About a week after I caught them, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Emma. She must have gotten a new phone, or borrowed someone else's, just to reach me. The message said we needed to talk, because she was pregnant. She said she didn't know who the father was, but there was a chance it was Jake's. I stared at that message for a long time. Pregnant. She was pregnant. And there was a chance the baby was my husband's. My husband, who I had loved for 7 years. My best friend, who I had known for most of my life. They had created a baby together, while I was halfway across the world buying gifts and planning surprises for them both. That's when something inside me shifted. The grief that had been consuming me slowly turned into something else, something cold, sharp, and powerful. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I was going to take back control of my life. And I was going to do it in a way that nobody saw coming. I started planning. I hired a lawyer immediately, one of the best in the city. She was expensive, but worth every penny. I told her everything, every painful detail, and she helped me come up with a strategy. Then I hired a private investigator. I needed to know everything, how long this had been going on, when it started, where they met, how often. I wanted every single piece of information. The investigator came back with a report that made me sick. The affair had been going on for 4 months, starting in May, and they'd been meeting, mostly at Emma's apartment, but sometimes in our house when I was at work. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. The investigator found text messages, receipts, photos, everything. Jake had even been buying Emma gifts, using money from our joint account. Armed with all that information, I put my plan into motion. I told Jake I wanted to meet and talk about everything, and he jumped at the chance. We met at a coffee shop. He came in looking hopeful, like maybe I was ready to forgive him. I let him sit down and let him start talking. He apologized again, insisted the affair was over, said Emma meant nothing, said he wanted to work on our marriage and do anything to make it right. I listened with a calm expression, and then I slid a folder across the table. I told him to open it. Inside was every piece of evidence the investigator had uncovered. The texts, the photos, the receipts, a timeline of the whole thing. I watched the color drain from his face as he flipped through the pages. Then I slid another folder across the table, divorce papers. I told him he could sign them now, or he could face me exposing everything to his family, his friends, and his job. Jake worked at a company with a strict ethics policy. This could cost him a promotion, or even his position. His parents were very traditional, and very religious. This would devastate them. I wasn't bluffing, and he knew it. He signed the papers right there in the coffee shop. I'd had my lawyer draw them up in a way that was extremely favorable to me. I got the house. I got most of our savings. He got to avoid public humiliation. It was a deal he had no choice but to take. Then I went to see Emma. I showed up at her apartment unannounced. She opened the door, looking terrible, crying, thinner, scared. Good, I didn't let her invite me in. I stood in her doorway and told her exactly what I thought of her. I told her she was a terrible person, and a terrible friend. I told her she had destroyed a 20-year friendship for a few months of sneaking around with someone else's husband. Then I told her about the pregnancy. I told her I knew there was a chance. The baby was Jake's. I told her that Jake had signed away all his rights in our divorce to any children born from this affair. My lawyer had included that in the papers. If the baby was Jake's, he would owe child support. But he had signed away custody rights. Emma started crying, and saying that wasn't fair. I told her life wasn't fair, and she should have thought about the consequences before she slept with my husband. But here's where my revenge really began. Emma worked at a small marketing firm, a place where reputation was everything, and where one of the senior partners was a woman who had been cheated on by her ex-husband, and was very vocal about her feelings on infidelity. I made sure this partner found out about Emma's affair with a married man. I didn't have to say much. I just happened to run into her at a networking event and mentioned in passing that I was going through a divorce because my husband had an affair with a woman who worked in marketing. She asked questions, and I answered truthfully. Word spread fast. Within 2 weeks, Emma was fired. Not officially for the affair. They couldn't do that legally, but suddenly her work wasn't up to par. Suddenly, she was making too many mistakes. Suddenly, she was let go. She called me, crying and screaming, saying I'd ruined her life. I told her she had ruined her own life and hung up. But I wasn't done. I also made sure that everyone in our social circle knew the truth. Not in a gossipy way. Was very strategic about it. I simply told the truth when people asked why Jake and I were divorcing. I didn't embellish. I didn't exaggerate. I just stated the facts. Jake and Emma had an affair for 4 months while I was planning a surprise anniversary trip. That's all I said. But that was enough. Our friends were horrified. Most of them cut off both Jake and Emma completely. Some reached out to offer me support. Some admitted they had suspected something was off, but didn't want to say anything without proof. That hurt, but I understood. Jake's family also reached out to apologize for his behavior. They said they had raised him better. His mother cried on the phone with me. I felt bad for them because they were innocent in all this. But I also couldn't maintain relationships with them after everything. Emma's family reached out as well. Her sister called to apologize, saying she couldn't believe Emma had done this, and that she was so ashamed of her. I appreciated the call, but I told her I needed space from anyone connected to Emma. She understood. The divorce was finalized quickly because Jake didn't contest anything. He just wanted it over. He wanted to move on and pretend like none of this had happened, but I wouldn't let him forget. We lived in a small enough town that people knew people, and I made sure that the story of what he had done followed him. Not in an obvious way. I never badmouthed him publicly. I never posted about it on social media. But when people asked, I told the truth, and the truth was damning enough. Jake's promotion fell through. His company decided to go with another candidate, someone with better judgment, someone more stable. He was devastated. He tried to blame me, but I had done nothing wrong. I had simply told the truth when asked. It wasn't my fault that his actions had consequences. Emma's pregnancy progressed. She posted about it on social media, trying to seem happy and excited. But I knew the truth. She was alone. She had lost her job. She had lost her friends. She had lost me. The baby's father was either Jake or some other man she had been seeing, which the investigator had also uncovered. Emma hadn't just been sleeping with Jake, she had been sleeping with at least one other person during the same time period. So much for my loyal best friend. Jake tried to distance himself from the pregnancy. He said he didn't think the baby was his. He said Emma had been sleeping with other people. He was probably right, but I didn't care. That was their mess to figure out. I was done with both of them. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I decided to take that trip to Japan, the trip I had planned for Jake and me, but I went alone. I used all the reservations I had made. I went to all the restaurants I had booked. I did all the experiences I had planned. And you know what? It was amazing. Better than it would have been with Jake. Because I was free. I was free from the lies, the betrayal, and the pain. I took that beautiful leather journal I had bought for Jake in Kyoto, and I used it myself. I wrote about everything that had happened, the pain, the anger, the revenge. I wrote about how it felt to take back control of my life. I wrote about the future I was going to build without them. While I was in Japan, I met someone. His name was David, and he was a travel photographer from Australia. We met at a temple in Kyoto, and started talking. He was kind, funny, and honest. We spent 3 days together exploring the city. Nothing romantic happened. We just talked, walked, and enjoyed each other's company. But it reminded me that there were good people in the world, people who could be trusted, people who wouldn't betray you. When I got back from Japan, I made more changes. I quit my job. I had been working at the same company for 6 years, and I was bored. I had stayed because it was stable and safe, but I didn't want safe anymore. I wanted adventure. I wanted to live. So I quit and started freelancing. I used my skills to work remotely. I started traveling more, visiting places I had always wanted to see. I made new friends. I built a new life. Emma had her baby in December. A girl. She posted one photo on social media, and then went quiet. I heard through the grapevine that Jake took a paternity test. And the baby wasn't his. It was the other guy's baby, the other guy who wanted nothing to do with Emma, or the child. Emma was truly alone. Part of me felt bad for the baby. Who didn't ask for any of this? But I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for Emma. She had made her choices. Jake tried to reach out a few times over the following months. He sent emails apologizing again, saying he had been in therapy and learned a lot about himself, and that he hoped we could eventually be friends. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. The thing that shocked everyone the most wasn't the divorce or the revenge, or even the way I had systematically dismantled both their lives. It was how completely I had moved on. People expected me to be bitter and angry for years. They expected me to wallow in pain. They expected me to struggle. But I didn't. I thrived. I became a better version of myself. I lost weight, not because I was depressed, but because I started hiking, doing yoga, and taking care of myself. I changed my hair. I changed my style. I changed my entire life. And I was happy. Genuinely happy. About a year after everything happened, I ran into Jake at a grocery store. It was the first time I had seen him since the day he signed the divorce papers. He looked older, tired. He was with some woman I didn't recognize, young and unimpressive. When he saw me, he looked like he wanted to disappear. I walked right up to him with a smile on my face. I said hello like he was an old acquaintance I barely remembered. I was polite and distant. He tried to make small talk and asked how I was doing. I told him I was doing great. I was traveling, working on projects I loved, and I was genuinely happy. He could see it was true, and something in his face just crumbled. He mumbled something about being happy for me, and then practically ran away. That encounter made me realize that the best revenge wasn't ruining their lives. Although, I had certainly done that. The best revenge was building an amazing life without them. It was showing them that I didn't need them to be happy. It was proving that their betrayal didn't break MIT, freed me. I also ran into Emma once at a coffee shop. She was with her daughter, who was about a year old by then. Emma looked exhausted, with bags under her eyes, and her clothes looked worn. When she saw me, she started crying right there in the middle of the coffee shop. She tried to apologize again, saying she thought about me every day, that she regretted everything, and that she had ruined the best friendship she had ever had for something meaningless. I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction at seeing her struggle, just nothing. I told her I forgave her. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. Then I told her I hoped she figured her life out for her daughter's sake, and I walked away. I never saw her again. People still ask me how I did it, how I moved on so completely, how I took something so devastating and turned it into something empowering. The answer is simple, but not easy. I decided that their betrayal wouldn't define me. I decided I deserved better than spending my life mourning what I had lost. I decided to focus on what I had gained: freedom, clarity, and a chance to build the life I truly wanted. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. There were dark days. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep. There were moments when I wanted to call Emma and tell her I missed her. There were times when I looked at photos from my wedding and felt the loss of what could have been. But I didn't let those moments consume me. I felt them, and then I moved forward. Now, it's been almost 2 years since that day. I came home early from Japan and caught them. 2 years since my world fell apart, and my life is better now than it ever was before. I'm living in a different city. I have a circle of friends who actually respect me. I'm dating someone wonderful who treats me the way I deserve to be treated. I'm working on projects that fulfill me. I'm happy. And that's what shocked everyone. Not the revenge, although that was satisfying. What shocked everyone was that I took the worst thing that ever happened to me and used it as a catalyst to create the best version of my life. I didn't let the betrayal make me bitter, closed off, or afraid to trust. I learned from it. I grew from it. I became stronger because of it. Jake and Emma gave me an unexpected gift that day. They freed me from a marriage that clearly wasn't as strong as I thought it was. They freed me from a friendship that wasn't real. They freed me to find people who actually deserved to be in my life. And for that, in a twisted way, I'm almost grateful. So yes, my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was traveling and planning a surprise for him. And yes, what I did afterward left everyone shocked. But the most shocking part wasn't the revenge, or the way I dismantled their lives. The most shocking part was that I took my life back completely and came out stronger, happier, and more fulfilled than ever before. And that, I realized, was a better ending than any revenge could ever be.